We're live? Good evening. Welcome to the
This
April 5th
conference will now
meeting.
be recorded.
Welcome to the April 5th meeting of the Finance Committee. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, 1-786-535-3211, and to access code 991-599-357. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com, join 991-599-357. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. So permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda participating remotely are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kevin Kennedy.
Here.
Ed Coleman.
Here.
Trevor Sansucci. He's not here. Michael Marshall.
Here.
Patrick Jones.
Here.
Town officials and employees participating, Town Manager Ed Kazanovich.
Here.
CFO Town Accountant Karen Harnois.
Here.
Administrative Assistant Sharon Kwiatkowski.
Here.
Okay, and we have no remote members today, so we will not be taking a roll call vote. On the agenda tonight, we're going to review and vote recommendations for the May 2nd, 2023 Annual Town Meeting warrant articles. We're then going to vote on capital improvement, the CIP budget, fiscal 2024, vote on transfer requests, look at minutes, and then adjourn. So let's go right to Mr. Kazanovich. Did you want to talk a little, talk about the latest budget update?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I provided to each member shortly before the opening of this meeting a packet which consists of a budget summary of the action and votes that the board has taken to date. This summary does include all of the operating budgets as well as the capital that you're going to consider tonight. It does not include any of the warrant articles that you're going to take action on. That being said, I just want to summarize this very quickly for you. When we look at the appropriations as it's compared to revenue and the total utilization of Prop 2.5, if we were to use the entire amount of Prop 2.5, we would have available, unobligated, for your consideration, $1,078,260. If the budget were to remain status quo, as it stands right now, the level of taxation that would be levied is approximately 18.14% of 2.5. And I believe it's just slightly under 300,000. That being said, you'd be taxing just under 1/2 of 1% out of 2.5. And our excess levy would climb from roughly 8,270,000 to roughly 9.3 million. I mean, 8,270,000 to 9.3 million. So this does account for all of the budgets that you voted. The second report in the packet is a slightly revised capital. It did not change bottom line, but the revenue sources did, there was a fluctuation of about 10. There must have been an error in the original calculation, I apologize for that, but you do have a corrected one before you tonight, and the summary on the final page is accurate. And that was calculated by a single sheet near the back. I'm just gonna hold this up. It gives a tally by funding source, so that's how those numbers were computed. And finally, Madam Chair, one other thing on the capital, as you can see, roughly 1.6 million is used in the FY '24 budget to fund our tax levy. We're borrowing about $951,000. That being said, if we did not follow our financial policies, we would be borrowing about $2.5 million to meet our capital needs. So the game plan was, we're adding 1/10 of Prop 2.5 towards our capital program every year. It grows by about $130,000 currently each year. The goal was ultimately to fund our entire capital through tax levy and not have to borrow any funds. We actually took a step backwards because of the increasing cost of goods and equipment. So it may take us a little longer to get to that goal. And finally, there are a few articles that are being requested to be funded through free cash. In accordance with our free cash policy, if you look at the last sheet of the packet that I gave you tonight, you're going to see the status of our free cash as it applied to the policy. So the certified free cash as of June of '22 versus June of '21 was net gain of 1.4 million. Our financial policy allows for the appropriation of no more than 50% of that. 50% is 700,582. Currently, in the FY '23 budget, we voted 320 of that 1.4 already, leaving a balance of roughly 380,000. We are asking consideration for Article 14 and 20, which totals 101, which would leave an unused balance in accordance with our policy of 279,000. Now, if we don't appropriate that, that just stays in undesignated and gets recomputed the following year. So, Madam Chair, that's just a quick summary. And with that, I think we could now move forward unless you have any questions.
No, I do not. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so let's
Just
look
one
at,
quick question. Article 14 and 20 are the only two in the current warrant. There's nothing, there's no other unknowns that could hit free cash unless they're brought up on the floor.
I may ask reconsideration, and for,
I think it's actually 17 and 20.
Article 17.
Correct articles.
well, let me just,
I just want to make sure I'm following him. So if he's got Article 14 and 20 for 101,000, and we know,
are you referring to the articles that don't have the monetary values in yet? No, okay.
no, the monetary value, so, and we can touch upon it. The school articles are not known because we haven't been notified by the state. We will be getting interest on a Pappas trust that's going to yield a level of interest that goes into that account. That does not come out of free cash or general fund revenue.
okay,
But I may ask for reconsideration, Article 26, to come out of free cash instead of general fund revenues. And I'd be curious to see the Finance Committee's position on that. We can have a discussion about that, but that may be a consideration out of free cash.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kazanovich. So, first article, Article 1, is to hear reports of the committees. We don't make any recommendation on, oh, do we make a recommendation on Article 1? No. Article 2, we do not make a recommendation on. That's, see if town meeting will vote to fix salary and compensation of elected town officials. Article 3, we've already made recommendations on. Do we need to vote too? Yes, we do. Okay, so, Article 3, to determine what sums of money the town meeting will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or otherwise provide for and appropriate to defray costs and expenses of the town, including debt and interest, and to provide for reserve fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, or act on anything relative thereto. So that's what we've gone through with the budget. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
Okay, so we don't have to do a roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right,
Madam Chair, the Finance Committee historically has taken a position on Article 2.
okay. Oh, 2, okay. Article 2 is to see if the town meeting will vote to fix the salary and compensation of elected town officers or act on anything relative thereto.
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Article 4 is to see if the town meeting will vote to approve a capital improvement budget for fiscal year 2024, to determine what sums of money will be raised by taxation and appropriated, transferred from available funds, acquired by lease purchase contract, authorized to be borrowed or otherwise provided for to fund the fiscal 2024 capital improvement budget, to determine under whose direction the expenditure of said funds will be made, and to authorize the town treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow money from time to time for notes, bonds, or notes in anticipation of bonds or revenues, to be payable in not more than the term provided by law. Said borrowed funds not to exceed such sums as the town may vote, and any premium received by the town upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of the issuance of such bonds and notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote, in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20 of the General Laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount, or act on anything relative thereto.
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend approval on the CIP budget, which is something we've been looking at during each night of the proceedings. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now, Articles 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. No, I'm going to say Articles 5 through 10 are annual articles. So do I hear a motion that we take those articles, their recommendation, together?
Madam, through the chair, a motion to take Articles 5 through 10 as one vote.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. So again, these are things we do every year. Article 5, to see if the town meeting will vote to authorize the town treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow money from time to time in anticipation of revenue to be received during the financial year beginning July 1, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, and to issue a note or notes that may be given for a period of less than 1 year, or act on anything relative thereto. And that's submitted by the town treasurer. Article 6, to see if the town meeting will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to submit applications for any available state or federal funds, including Department of Elder Affairs formula grant funds, which funds the board determines to be beneficial to the town, and to authorize the expenditure of any money received as a result of said application, or act on anything relative thereto. And that's submitted by the Board of Selectmen. Article 7, to see if the town meeting will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to sell at public auction or by sealed bid, or at assessed value under special circumstances, any properties which the town may have acquired or may hereafter acquire through tax title foreclosure proceedings, and to sign, acknowledge, and deliver in the name and under the seal of the town deeds therefore, or act on anything relative thereto, submitted by the Board of Selectmen. Article 8, to see if the town meeting will vote to authorize the town treasurer to enter into compensatory balance agreements during the fiscal year 2024 as permitted by Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F, or any other enabling statute. If voted, this would permit the treasurer to maintain specific sums of money and deposit in banks in return for banking services, or act on anything relative thereto, submitted by the town treasurer. Article 9, to see if the town meeting will vote to establish or renew revolving funds for various town and school programs in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53D, and Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 71, or act on anything relative thereto, submitted by the town manager. And Article 10, to see if the town meeting will vote to authorize the town manager to enter into a contract or contracts with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for the construction and maintenance of public highways for the period commencing July 1, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, or act on anything relative thereto, submitted by the town manager.
Motion to recommend for approval those articles?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to recommend approval for Articles 5 to 10. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. So Article 11, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate from available funds, a sum of money if it becomes available from the Mass Department of Transportation, Chapter 90, bond issue proceeds, to be used for the repair and maintenance of town roads in conformance with Mass General laws or act on anything relative thereto, submitted by the town manager. So, Mr. Kazanovich, we don't know that number yet?
I think it's about 609,000. Yeah, about it has been 609.
So is that the number we should put in here?
You don't have to put a number in there.
We can just leave, okay. All right, so I've read Article 11. Does anyone have any questions?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend approval. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Article 12, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $125,000 from Medicaid receipts within the general fund revenue to the Auburn School Department operating budget for fiscal year 2024 to fund supplies and medical, therapeutic, and educational services for significantly disabled special needs students, as well as tuition and transportation to and from outside placements or within the district for special needs students, or act on anything relative thereto. And again, this is an annual article, and this is a reimbursement for, that is received from the state for money that's already been spent by the school department.
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend approval. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Article 13, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate a sum of money, which is the interest earned by the Auburn High School Gymnasium Health and Recreational Trust Fund to offset school department costs at Auburn High School in support of community health and recreational activities at Auburn High School Gymnasium and related facilities or equipment, or act on anything relative thereto by the Auburn School Committee. So, Mr. Kazanovich, is this one we'll approve this when we have a number on, shall we meet before the?
I would recommend that. We're waiting for the March statement to come in
Okay.
to provide us with a number.
Okay,
So do we take a motion to take no position until the prior to town meeting?
right, and we'll have a meeting right before town meeting, and that number will be known. Okay,
And we'll get that number to you in advance of that meeting, so.
thank you, okay. So do I hear a motion that we take no position at this time until town meeting?
Motion to take no position at this time until the town meeting?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Article 14, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate a sum of money from McKinney-Vento receipts within the general fund revenues to the Auburn School Department operating budget for fiscal year 2024 to fund transportation for students to and from school who have become homeless during the fiscal year, or act on anything relative thereto from the school committee. So this would also be a reimbursement, correct, Mr. Kazanovich?
No, this is a direct aid from the state, and this
Okay.
will become known once the cherry sheet numbers are final, and so sometimes these are kicked until the fall.
Okay,
In the past, sometimes they used an estimate based on the prior year, but we'll get some direction from the schools as to what they would prefer.
so should we take no position right now then, correct?
That would be my recommendation.
Okay,
Motion to take no position at this time until the town meeting?
Second.
okay, we have a motion and second to take no position at this time until town meeting. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Article 15, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate a sum of money from foster care transportation receipts within the general fund revenues to the Auburn School Department operating budget for fiscal year 2024 to fund transportation costs for students to and from school who are residing in foster care placements during the fiscal year, or act on anything relative thereto. Is this the same situation as the McKinney-Vento numbers? Okay.
Motion to take no position at this time until the town meeting?
Second.
Okay, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? No. Okay, Article 16, to see if the town will vote to establish a special purpose stabilization fund from opioid settlement proceeds for educational, health-related purposes. All revenue from settlement will be dedicated to such fund or act on anything relative thereto. So, Mr. Casanovich, you can tell us about this, please?
So there are we entered into a lawsuit with a number of other municipalities throughout the Commonwealth as it relates to a lawsuit against certain drug companies. We've already received $120,000 of proceeds from one settlement. There are other settlements out there that would provide some additional proceeds to us. That being said, currently, if we don't set up this account, it goes to the general fund, and we're unable to appropriate those funds, not knowing when the reimbursement is coming in, for educational type things that will help individuals out there who are in need of, who are struggling from addiction. It educates at the school level, the damages from the use of certain drugs. By putting it into this account, any revenue that comes in will go into a reserve account. That reserve account gets carried over every year, and we can appropriate out of that with a two-thirds vote at town meeting. Right now, we're losing that to the general fund, and we lose the ability to use it for its intended purpose. So this is the way to reserve that and use it for future years.
So who'll be in charge of making the decisions about how the money's spent?
So a recommendation would come from town administration, the school department. We would agree on what level of appropriation is adequate for the need. It would come before you, just like any other warrant article, and ultimately, it would have to be approved by town meeting.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Just briefly, so Board of Health would also be in that to say
Yes.
that's relative to?
Yep.
Okay. And with a fund like this, so once the revenues, all the settlements are concluded, the case is closed, there's the fund is, and it's expended, do we ever have accounts that we just take off the books at some point? You know, so this is established and say, it takes 20 years to go through the funds, or 10 years to go through the funds, and now it's an empty account. Do we maintain an account like that for possibly taking money from others to maintain ongoing things, or are there other accounts that we have that are just zeroed out over the years?
No, I think once the account is created by a vote of town meeting, it stays on the books, albeit if it's zeroed out, it's a non-active account. But if, we wouldn't have to go back to establish that account again, because town meeting already established it.
Would, just, for instance, you had another settlement of a similar type, let's just say, back to the tobacco days.
Yep.
Could having such an account like this, is it specific to that one settlement, or is it an account that you could use for other similar type settlements
It's
for the future?
specific to opioid settlement. So tobacco doesn't fit the opioid. Now, whether the DOR would allow for consideration for another settlement that may be different than the opioid, we'd have to have that conversation with DOR.
I'm just wondering, when you establish, are the rules very strict as to?
Very strict.
So you couldn't title it a public health settlement?
No.
Fund, it has to be specific to the,
Yeah, we got an IGR ruling from the Department of Revenue, it's specific to opioid settlement.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? No, okay. So, Article 17, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $40,000 from free cash to cover costs not reimbursed under policy coverage from damage from the burst pipe at the senior center or act on anything relative thereto. Do you want to just give us an update, Mr. Kesavich?
Sure, so, I mean, I just threw a number out there. Right now, I gave the board an update at their last meeting, where we have total estimated damages that are just shy of 200,000. Right now, we're at about 165, but there were other costs that they were considering. I would put it around 200 right now. Now, that could climb. given it's an estimated cost, if the estimate is shy, we can submit a supplemental and request additional amounts of money. There are certain things we will not get reimbursed on. A, the deductible for 5,000. B, we got a denial on the HVAC system because it was 25 years old. And they're claiming that the water damage was not the main reason why the system failed. It was because of age. We challenged that, we got another denial. So to replace the HVAC system is about 12,000. I just want to provide a backstop so we can get things back up and running. I don't have really the legal authority to expend in excess what we believe we're going to receive, or Karen's going to yell at me. So this just provides more or less an advance for something that may not be anticipated or something that has not been provided for.
Okay, thank you.
Now, if we don't use it, we can always close it out
Right.
to the general fund, and it becomes part of the calculation of free cash.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Just, so is that number enough as a backstop? Are you being, I know you're very good and very conservative, but this is one, relative to the summer and cooling centers, and we want to make sure it's,
Yeah, well,
they're up and running as soon as possible.
I feel good about that number, and because when we get reimbursed at replacement cost. They don't depreciate the equipment, so I'm just focusing on the items that have been denied. I believe that if the estimate is shy, that we can go back and get a supplemental to that claim. And then there are some provisions in the coverage that will allow us to go back, like the flooring. If the flooring is fixed and it buckles within a 5-year period, we can go back and reopen up the claim. So I feel pretty confident that 40 would be adequate enough.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Article 18, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $225,856 from receipts reserved for appropriation bond premium reserve account number 26135 for the payment of a lease purchase obligation for 3 police vehicles fully equipped or act on anything relative thereto. So, Mr. Kesnovich, it's, what is the, what fund is this? Receipts reserved for?
So, the last time we went and borrowed money was about $5 million, about 2 years ago. The regulations that were in place, we forced a premium on the sale of the bond, so we received $400-some-odd thousand. The law has changed since. That forced premium, we were allowed to reserve and use it for the purchase of other equipment that would qualify under a normal borrowing. Now, any premium that is recognized has to be used now for the payment of debt and interest on that bond sale, okay? So we reserve that, it's available. We intended to use that like we have in the past for future purchase of capital, less reliance on tax levy, less reliance on future borrowing of funds to fund those needs. So we have about 400-some-odd thousand. This is just a piece of it. I think when the police department came in, we indicated because they're a full complement now, there was a need for an additional vehicle per shift. This allowed us to do that, and we also wanted to purchase some vehicles at a time when we knew we can get vehicles, because there's a wait now to get the vehicle. And we did that with the ambulance as well. So this really now adequately supplies vehicles for the police department. And this money would be paid through a lease purchase. We only did it for 2 years. We want to pay it off as quickly as possible.
Okay. So, this money's not in the CIP. Will it be in the CIP, the second year of the lease purchase be in the CIP next year?
No, this will entirely pay for that lease agreement.
Oh, so this will do the whole thing?
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
Now, there is one other premium in the CIP for $50,000. I don't know if you noticed that. I'll have to go see which one it was. I think it was under the engineer.
Is it under inspectional services?
Inspectional services, the hybrid electric vehicle, in addition to this 225,000, we also committed 50 of that premium towards that vehicle, in inspectional services.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kazamovich. Any questions? So we'll still have some left over, maybe to use in the fall?
Yes.
Right, okay,
Madam
good.
Chair, just
Yep.
a question, because every town meeting we get questions about the police vehicles in the lot, so I'm sure someone's gonna ask the question. So I understand getting ahead of it, where the funds are available to get ahead of the needs in the department and the delays in getting them, but could that mean in the future for CIP, you reassess the needs for subsequent fiscal years if their fleet gets into such a condition where you may not need, because you've got a track of, a schedule of ordering that's sort of been consistent. This sort of, it adds to it, gives you some buffer, but could that be reviewed for future CIP years so that?
We're definitely gonna review that, but I think I mean, at least I heard it from the deputy as well as the chief. The cost of the vehicle, not only has that increased, but to equip the vehicle as well as increased pretty substantially, so we will reassess that, and I think we will ask for a cycle that makes, we were in a 3-3-4 cycle, 3-3-4. Whether that cycle stays the same or whether that's reassessed and whether that's changed remains to be seen, but we will make that part of the annual review.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to recommend approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, Article 19, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $25,000 from overlay surplus 012230 for training, support, and services, or act on anything relative thereto by the town assessor. So I guess what kind of services are being provided, and what kind of training?
I'll let Seth get into the details of that.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Seth.
Hi, Seth Willard from the Assessing Division. So the $25,000 request is essentially training and support from RRC, which is our personal property vendor. Their services and salaries have increased substantially, and also Vision, for the most part, it's kind of the same story. So their software, their support, their technical analysis has all gone up significantly. And I think in the budget meeting before, last year, it was at $25,000. I think Karen, maybe you can just verify this. We dropped it down to $15,000. So in the actual budget itself, it went down $10,000, but to make up for the shortfall, it's a $25,000 warrant article because of the increase, basically, of salaries and fees and services for our vendors.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Can you tell me, Seth, are some of these contractual services over a few years? So do you sign something with Vision, or do you sign something with your RRC that maybe captures a premium payment for, say, 3 or 5 years, other than a reval year?
Correct. This particular article is just for this year. And RRC, excuse me, originally quoted us $28,000, which would be another $10,000. We negotiated them down to $18,000 to kind of do not a full list and measure for the personal property, but for kind of a spot, I don't want to say a spot check, but not the full shebang. So this is just specific to this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
these funds have already been certified at the request of Seth and Karen certified that those funds are available.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend approval. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Seth. Article 20, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate from free cash the sum of $61,000 for software costs or act on anything relative thereto. And this is what, Michael had alluded to when he brought his budget in. Correct? Does anyone have any questions?
This is gonna replace what we currently have
Yeah.
because the level of support, annual support is, has gone up, and now the current vendor is also charging us an outrageous hourly rate. The level of support is not adequate for our needs, so we need to shift gears. There is gonna be an overlap period of approximately 6 months where we have to maintain the old while the new is being rolled in. So we've covered both costs, but next year, the current provider's obligation will go away.
And that obligation is in the, operating budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just to cover, you said there's 6 months overlap for when we maintain the old and we move with the new. Are we confident that 6 months, I mean, is the conversion complex enough that we could go beyond the 6 months?
There's several different pieces to this. I've been told that at least the ACO or the animal piece, which is dovetailed with the clerk's office, should be ready by September-ish. I think they're making that a priority because right now the current software cannot calculate certain things, and we're losing out on some revenue on that. So I think that is a priority, and I think they're committed to getting that online first.
I think to be full transparent, and professionally, I've had to experience some conversions lately, and what I'm finding is that there's really multiple tiers of costs. So at tier 1, you get no procedure manuals, you get no instructions, you get no support. At level 2, you might get one handout, and some of us are being left to work with conversions and with limited documentation, and that's really what generated the question, is not really what the level of support is, but to know that we've got the proper plan in place, so when we do go through the conversion, we're not coming back to town meeting for, multiple money because of, learning later what the package really included.
I can speak to that if you want. Through the chair, so this new system is designed so that our staff in-house will be trained to create the system, create the applications, and make changes to them as needed.
Great.
The system we have now, we don't have any capability to make any changes, and they want to charge us $200 an hour every time we have an issue with it. So, and I believe we budgeted for the full year for the old system, and we're hoping to be done with it in 6 months.
Great. Thank you.
Listen, I've been through it before. I know, Patrick, the anxiety level is high when you're going through something like that, due to, several potential unknowns and whether or not it's going to succeed or not. But I feel pretty confident. We've met several times on this. We have a game plan. We're going to roll out that game plan, and I think what we're presenting to you and to town meeting, we hope will be
No, and I have all the confidence in the town and the decisions that are being made. I just think it merited being transparent that doing business today with software companies and having the products that are coming to market, some of them are delivering them to market much more prematurely than in the past when they had all the procedure manuals and they had bugs worked out and everything. So I'm confident in what we're talking about. I think I just want to express that while I probably got some owner of some IT company out there listening, that we really don't appreciate, sometimes finding out after we've signed the dotted line that we're sort of left to some of, having to make up for stuff on our own because it wasn't clear in the transition. So again, this is not, I plan on recommending this, but I just wanted from, where I sit, I can't speak for the rest of the board, and I understand it, but I just wanted to be transparent in an effort to recognize that there could be some hiccups, and better that we talk about it now than at town meeting a year from now when, it could, so thank you.
I think we experienced a lot of those hiccups with our current provider, and that's what brought us
To this place.
here today.
Sure.
Through the chair, Caleb, are any of our partner municipalities in the area utilizing this new company as well?
Yeah, almost every town around is moving to
So you've
this
got plenty of,
platform. Yeah,
Plenty of
I've
people-
I've
plenty of
researched
people
it with a
lean
lot
on
of
and Pick up
communities.
the phone before you
They're,
have to call.
they're very familiar with transferring from our current provider to them because they've done it in so many other
There are
communities.
a lot of lessons learned out there, and you guys will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. All right. Article 21, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate $16,720 from fiscal 2024 general fund revenues to fund a regional housing coordinator act on anything relative thereto, submitted by the Director of the Department of Development and Inspectional Services. So, Darlene, do you want to tell us what this is about? Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, thank you for the question. So we have, the town of Auburn has a housing production plan that is approximately about 5 years old. It is approved by the state, and that housing production plan is to help assess our housing needs and affordable housing going forward. That plan is required to be updated every 5 years, so we're in the year that it has to be updated. Our staff are already working on the pieces of our existing housing plan to get those updates made. In fact, we are going to be rolling out a housing survey. I think we're rolling it out actually Friday, the end of this week. And that survey will be out for about 8 weeks. We're hoping that the town will participate in answering those questions to help us with the housing needs. This request before you is actually for a housing coordinator. It's a regional position. So approximately earlier this year, a couple months ago, Central Mass Regional Planning Council, CMRPC, in Worcester, had a grant that came to them. And so they reached out to their communities, and there are approximately about 5 towns, including Auburn, that responded for some, really to find out what this grant was about. So there is a tiered system. The $16,000 and change that we're asking for, $16,720, is for a level of support for a position that will be full-time through Central Mass Regional Planning Committee, but will afford approximately about 4 hours per week for our town. In other towns, I think all 5 towns were looking for the minimal level of support, so it'll be about 4 hours a week. That person will actually help us with our plan. They'll be able to provide support to our office and to town administration for any housing, affordable housing questions, 40B, any 40B applications, and anything in that realm. We feel that this is something that is needed. We have more and more applications and interest in affordable housing, and that's the reason for the request. Happy to answer any questions for you.
So do we get their service for a year? 4 hours a week for a year?
Yeah, so actually, probably the best thing about this position is that for the first year, it's completely free. So CMRPC will use the grant funds to fund the position for FY '24, so starting July 1st, we're hoping that they can bring somebody on. July 1st this year to June 30th of next year will be free, and so we are looking for funding for FY '25, where we know that this is something that people may have questions about. We wanted to start early and put that out there. It is something that you hear all the time. It's something that the state is talking about, and a lot of requirements coming down for making housing affordable. And, you know, we have other projects in town for the senior housing. Mary D. and JB were redevelopment projects that allowed for more housing in town for seniors. But this, in general, it's all affordable housing.
Question?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome. So Article 22, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate the sum of $2,895 from fiscal year 2024 general fund revenues for the purpose of all ZBA/planning, site plan variances, special permits, ANR, and subdivision records in one database, or act on anything relative thereto, submitted by the town clerk. Can you tell us about this, Ms. Kazanovich?
I'll try. And the town clerk was not available to speak on this evening. This is more or less just a cataloging system that allows for easy retrieval of plans at all levels. So that's what she's seeking here, is just a database that'll allow her to catalog whatever we have in the safe right now and continue that, so there'd be less administrative time in retrieval of those if it is requested. Because right now, it's just a matter of going down and sorting through. I don't know what format it's in now, but it is very time-consuming.
So is this for current plans that are under consideration, or are these for historical, you know, in the past plans?
So I don't know how retroactively back she's going to catalog these items, but I think as time allows, she will. Just like we have with other historical data down there. It becomes really a time element in doing that, but this is strictly just for the software and not for the admin time to do that other type of work.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, 23, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate the sum of $20,000 from available funds, election drop-off box 251-62002, $3,156, FY '21 November election postage, 2516203, $2,225.56. State early voting, 251622017, $11,232.32. And state primary election, 251007, $3,386.12 for a high-speed ImageCast central bundle tabulator for use with all VPM/ABS ballots at elections, or act on anything relative thereto. So, what's this for? Is this?
My
just-
recollection is when the town clerk came in for her operating budget, she alluded to the fact that she would be seeking an outside article for a high-speed tabulator to count the early voting. Because it was, especially at a time with the presidential primary and the general election, that becomes overwhelming.
And I see this isn't coming from general funds, this is coming, are these all articles?
So those are all revenue sources received from the state for the purposes that are identified here. Those costs were originally absorbed through the election division. And so the money came in after the close of the fiscal year.
Okay.
So that money could be used for, and she checked with the election division, the money could be used for the purpose that she is requested here.
Gotcha, okay, thank
Because
you.
it is election-related.
Okay,
Through the chair. Just for those of us that are not as accounting inclined. So these are funds we've already spent out of our actual operating budget that have
Yes.
subsequently been reimbursed,
Yes,
but from an accounting perspective, we couldn't get the money back because the fiscal year had already closed.
yes,
So it's essentially just taking funds that they've spent and been reimbursed for and applying, and essentially taking the reimbursement out of available funds and putting it into this?
yes.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
You're there.
In most cases, you know, the state will reimburse a community through a supplemental type of bill. That's considered, you know, late in the year, and the money sometimes doesn't get here on or before June 30th, so those, what we expense closed out, we don't have the ability to isolate that.
And if it had come in during the fiscal year, they could have
We would not
applied
be
for a
available.
transfer?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
You're there.
Through the chair? Mm-hmm. If those monies, on the same sort of vein, if those monies are not approved by town meeting, what happens to those monies that were given back by the state?
So we could use them, town meeting still would have to vote it out for another purpose. It stays in the account.
It stays in that account
No.
until,
We could always recognize that the general fund absorbed those expenses and do a journal entry, taking it and reimbursing what we call fund balance. But typically, we would ask like an audit adjustment for that.
and secondly, I see other departments are well represented here to represent their articles. Was there any reason the town clerk was not able to be here?
The town clerk is not available for the next 2 weeks. She's taking vacation time.
any other questions? No?
My motion's gonna be different, so I don't know if you want.
Do I hear a motion do I hear a motion to recommend approval for Article 23?
Motion to approve Article 23?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, opposed?
Opposed.
So we have a 3-2.
That does not pass.
2, 8, 4.
Three yeses, 2 noes, so we need 4 to pass, right? Okay, so it's not approved. Do we have to take another motion?
So, Madam Chair, I don't know if this is one of the items you want to reconsider the night of town meeting, or do you want to entertain another motion?
I think we should probably reconsider it the night before town meeting. So do I hear another motion now for Article 23 to take no position at this time until the town meeting?
I'll make a motion to take no position at this time until the town meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Okay.
And Madam Chair, that way, hopefully you'll have the sponsor of this article available the night of your meeting to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, yep. Okay, the next that's 23. Next article is 24. To see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate the sum of $150,000 from sewer enterprise retained earnings for engineering and design services to evaluate and rehabilitate a portion of the 16-inch ductile iron fence main which conveys sewage from the Sword Street Pump Station or act on anything relative thereto by the Sewer Department DPW Director. So does someone want to come up and tell us about this one? Oh, you're right there, sorry, okay.
Here I am.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, wow, that's, okay. Can you tell us what it's, what the project is, maybe more specifically?
Yes, thank you for that. So this is one of our wastewater pumping stations. It's the third largest station in town, over on Sword Street. There's a history of breaks in that force main, and it's a very significant amount of flow. It's a pretty extreme challenge to handle that when there are breaks. So we are looking to do a design for a lining of that pipe. It's about 5,000 feet, going from Sword Street up Jerome Ave to the top of the hill there. So this would be for design services for that work.
Okay. So if that's just, okay. Oh, so you're gonna have to get more money later to do the actual work?
Oh, yes, yeah. So we got some preliminary numbers from some engineers about what the cost of that would be. So this is a 16-inch ductile iron force main. I think it's a little over 5,100 feet. At ballpark, $450 a foot, this would be north of $2 million project. So the intent would be to do a design that would include probably a preliminary design phase to do some evaluations and kind of come up with the correct approach. Once we go through the design phase, we would then see how we want to phase the project. I expect this would be done maybe in multiple phases. I don't think this is something we would be able to do all at once. But once we go through the design and get cost estimates from the engineer for the construction, we could kind of come up with an approach at that point and figure out how we're going to handle funding.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Any questions?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second?
So we have a motion and a second to recommend approval on Article 24. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye, opposed? Okay, so Article 25 is to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate the sum of $200,000 from sewer enterprise retained earnings for engineering and design services to rehabilitate a portion of the 24-inch reinforced concrete sewer interceptor line which runs from Goddard Drive to Route 20, or act on anything relative thereto. Can you tell us about this one also, please?
Yes, I can. So this is another design phase task. So last year, we completed the first year of our annual sewer system evaluation survey that's mandated by Mass DEP. They surveyed about 10% of the town, and based off of some preliminary evaluations, it was expected it was sort of the worst 10%. So they made some recommendations from that, and the most immediate need that they found were structural deficiencies in the 24-inch concrete pipe that runs from where one of our pump stations discharges down to our largest pump station. So this pipe takes about half of the wastewater flow of the town. And the difficulty is not only the size and the amount of flow, but also access. This goes from Goddard Drive through the woods, essentially, around the diversion channel all the way down over to Route 20. So it's a pretty challenging stretch. The number that I'm requesting is basically what the engineering firm estimated for the design services for that work. I think it may be a little bit conservative. I'm hoping it won't be quite that much, but that's the number we use right now. We haven't had a chance to go and get actual quotes from engineers for the design of that yet. So we're hoping to do that.
And again, this is just for the design, right?
That is correct,
So
yep.
what is it, just a ballpark number for the actual work?
I expect the work for that to be around $1 million. I think that one was actually $1.2 or $3 million is what they estimated for the work, but that was, again, a ballpark estimate. It depends on the sort of conditions of the pipe and also the access and things like that. So once we get proposals, we'll have a better number for that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Just one follow-up to yours through the chair. Are we hoping for a grant or something for this? Or is it something?
I don't expect that there will be any grants available for this type of work. This would be something that we would likely need to finance. I know there are certain loans available, SRF loans, and we'll have to kind of evaluate if that's the path we want to go, or if there's other maybe more attractive
Great.
ways to finance it.
Thank you.
So those loans you referenced, are those the low-interest loans from the state?
That is correct. So the state revolving fund has low-interest loans. They also have loan forgiveness, so they forgive a portion of the loan. And we would need to apply for that and be approved, and then find out, sort of the specifics of it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Nick. Questions? More questions? No?
And Madam, just
Yes.
something worth mentioning too, they're doing $1 million project that was approved through the use of opera funds for the Warren Street that the Board of Selectmen approved.
Oh, so there's a current project going on that we're using ARPA funds for. Great, and where is that located again?
It's Warren Street, right?
Yeah, yeah, Warren Road, yep.
Warren Road, yeah.
Warren Road. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yep.
You mentioned that we did about 10% of the town's system last year, or this year, I guess. I assume we're going to do another 10%, another 10%. We've done the worst, hopefully the worst part, but should we expect additional design services, additional projects, additional?
Absolutely, yeah. So the total recommendations from this past survey was, I believe it was north of $2.5 million. There's another $1 million project that would involve lining another section of concrete pipe. That is something that we would have to push to the future. Part of what we were intending to do another round of surveying this year, but because of the cost of the capital projects that they recommended and the cost of doing the actual survey, we decided to forego that this year in order to focus on figuring out the capital projects that are already in front of us. But yeah, the intent would be to continue to survey the sewer system and continue to make recommendations for any areas that they find that are deficient.
And you mentioned that this is like a state mandated program. Is there a
That is correct.
timeline by which we have to complete these surveys?
No, there's not like a hard timeline, nor is there a hard number of percentage of the system or anything like that that you're supposed to survey. It's really more of they want to keep towns honest as far as asset management. The problem is a lot of communities built sewers around the same time and sort of left them and forgot about them, and then things have piled up. So, you know, in hopes of avoiding some kind of catastrophe in the future, they're kind of keeping people honest and saying, okay, let's start this, time to start doing asset management now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, relative to sewers and sewer maintenance, I guess, one for you, Nick, like, what percentage of the town is utilizing the sewers in terms of residences, and are we at, 80% of the town, and should the retained account be the funding source for those sewers, since it's really just the users that, their systems? It's just sort of a philosophical question as to maintaining the system that's only being used by some and are paying into it, and we're putting funds aside to.
That is a great question, and that's been a topic that we've discussed on a number of occasions. We always said to ourselves, what level of retained earnings is sufficient enough to meet our short-term and long-term needs? There's really no guideline for that. So, as you can see, our retained earnings is being used for the engineering services. Typically, what we do is we go out for a loan authorization and a long-term borrowing. We try to seek low-interest loans through the state as well. That's how we typically funded our major projects. We do appropriate a level of appropriation and $100,000 a year in an effort to build up our retained earnings, at least kind of hold it constant. That's becoming increasingly difficult to do, especially when we notice a lag in revenues that is leading to an erosion of our retained earnings. So that's something we're monitoring now, but there needs to be a long-term plan to address our capital infrastructure, replacement costs. So that's something we're going to be doing in the next year or two, but and that's difficult to do because ultimately that requires an increase in rate in order to build that up. We're also struggling with the fact, and we have no control over it, we'd be paying higher interest costs on the money we're borrowing to fund these capital improvements. And that puts a strain on the operational side of the budget as well. So it's all about timing, it's all about structuring our borrowing and our debt, whether we go out for a short term, ride out the wave, hopefully the rates will come down. If not, we try to build in a callable provision in our bonds so we can refinance it at some point, at least to minimize our level of interest that we're paying.
And I'm not sure, it sounded like you were asking if people who aren't tied into the sewer are paying for it, but they're not, right? So only the people who are
The users.
the users are paying. So if someone has a septic system or something else, they're not paying for this at all.
Currently, but if we had a
Right.
bond to take bonds, potentially they're,
No, all debt and interest is carried strictly by the enterprise.
it is, okay,
Yeah.
Yep.
thank you.
What is the percentage, just out of curiosity? Do we know?
I'm sorry, which percentage?
Auburn residents who are tied into the sewer system?
I
It
don't
can
know if I
be a
have that number
ballpark.
off the top of my head. I'm happy to get that for you. Is it 80%? Yeah, I've heard that before, and I think that's probably about accurate, 80% maybe,
Okay.
the number.
I mean, more people, if they have the opportunity, I think nowadays are tying in as opposed to dealing with, was it Title, there's a Title
Title V,
V relative to the septics, and that's a whole cost prohibitive thing, I believe now, from my understanding, but.
I don't know what percentage of that 20% that's not tied in have the ability to tie in. If not, it's gonna require some additional infrastructure, or maybe a pump station, or, which is, you'd have to pass on to those users through a betterment fee, in addition to a user fee for the annual cost.
Do we take into consideration as we do roadway improvements to some of those roadways that maybe historically did not have sewer lines to be, while the roads are open, to say this is the time? I mean, I'm just talking here.
I don't think it's a major factor in that, but, you know, the portions of the town that aren't currently sewered are some of the more challenging ones to sewer. There's elevation difficulties, so they would be increasingly expensive to tie some of these people in. But it's certainly something that we look at.
So, I think historically, the areas that were sewered or the areas that sewers were added, that came from, you know, the need, you know, the residents requesting that service. If we came upon that situation, whether it's the residents' need or an environmental factor, then we'd look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
One more for Nick.
One more, yeah. To see if the town meeting, number 26, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate the sum of $100,000 from fiscal year 2024 general fund revenues for safety and electrical upgrades within the DPW highway garage, or act on anything relative thereto by the sewer superintendent and DPW director. So what would be included in this upgrade?
Do you want to talk about Mega and
So, we had recently had a safety evaluation of our garage, and there were certain things that were pointed out that we need to address. You know, recently, municipalities needed to, you know, now have to abide by OSHA, so, you know, as a result, wanted to make sure that we're doing our job to keep our employees safe, and the garage is one of those places that, you know, you look to first. I think in the past year, we've upped our training of employees, but we had a consultant or one of our insurance companies come in and evaluate the garage, and one of the things that was mentioned, or there was a list of things that was mentioned, but a large portion of that cost would be electrical upgrades. So there's criteria that if you have equipment that is being used on a regular basis, you can only use extension cords for 90 days. And we have permanent equipment that is, you know, is using those extension cords. In addition to electrical repairs, there's outlets that are no longer working, and that our electrical panel is old enough that certain parts are no longer available for replacement. So, in addition to the electrical upgrades, we were looking at, secondary containment of chemicals, and flammable material storage. So there's kind of a list of things that we'd like to address with these funds.
Through the chair? So just, your requests are all based upon the town insurer's survey of the garage for safety and safety purposes.
Right.
Thank you.
Questions?
I believe you had said you wanted to consider
So
changing the funding source.
I'm asking, I'd be, when we started the meeting, I said I would probably reconsider the funding source for this warrant article. A, because this was not planned, it was unanticipated. And given some of the requests that we did not consider, that we may revisit in the fall, I'm trying to minimize the level of taxation as best I can. I've been asked to do that by the Board of Selectmen. We've made every effort to do that over the past 10 years. We haven't taxed the 2.5. And I know our residents are struggling. We have the free cash available. So why not do it as a one-time appropriation and meet these deficiencies and minimize our liability by making the fix, yeah.
So you want it to come from free cash?
So I would suggest that we appropriate it from free cash and remove general fund revenues.
Just write, free cash.
Can the Finance Committee recommend a rewording of the article, or it has to stand because other committees are voting on it?
So what we would do is, the Board of Selectmen are gonna take a position on this Monday evening. If we get a motion from the Finance Committee requesting that this be appropriated from free cash, we will convey that to the Board of
So do
Selectmen.
we make a motion to amend the article first?
Or could we just approve it based with the new language?
I would say that you would make a motion to accept my recommendation to change the funding source from general fund revenue to free cash.
And then we would have to vote on whether we recommended it that way or not. It's a two-part vote, right?
Yep.
Okay, I will make a motion that we accept the town manager's recommendation to change the funding source to free cash.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. All right, so the article now reads, Article 26, to see if the town meeting will vote to appropriate the sum of $100,000 from free cash for safety and electrical upgrades within the DPW highway garage or act on anything relative thereto. You know, I just want to ask you, $100,000 is a lot. Is that, so you're saying that includes the electrical panel, electrical outlets, storage of flammable material and chemicals?
We're also looking at, we have there's a trench drain going across the garage, and it's sinking, so it's also creating a tripping hazard. So as part of this, we'd be looking to reconstruct the drain and address the flooring, and as well as regrading it and sealing it so that if there were any additional spills, it would create a barrier and not go into the groundwater.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Has there been any consideration to whether there's like any potential environmental issues with the drain? If it's a garage drain, I'm assuming there's,
So the drain goes into an oil water separator.
yeah, I more mean, and I'm sorry for my, if it's sinking, are we concerned that that's like a structural issue with the whole building? Is anything getting out of the building into the ground below? Or is it just a flooring issue?
So I think that you had,
Yeah, no, it doesn't look like it's a larger structural issue. It really looks more like a kind of a collapse around where the drain kind of goes into the lower sump and goes out to the oil water separator. There's, we haven't had a structural evaluation done or anything
Yeah.
like that, but nothing appears to be sort of a larger issue, you know, other than the
Are
general
we-
age of the building itself.
Yeah, maybe this is getting like will we need to break ground? Or is this like entirely within an existing structure where we wouldn't be worried about it?
It would be
Because-
within the footprint of the existing building. It would just be kind of, I mean, we'd have to have some look at it, but likely saw cutting out a portion of the concrete flooring and replacing it with, regrading it and replacing it with a new trench drain.
Any questions?
Yeah, motion to recommend for approval with the language as
As
adopted.
stated, yeah.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Thank you very much. All right. Article 27 is about a change in zoning bylaws, Section 7 signs, and we do not usually, we don't take a position on zoning articles because there's no monetary impact. So do I hear a motion to defer to the petitioner for Article 27?
Motion to defer to the petitioner.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, and Article 28 is also a zoning bylaw regarding floodplain districts. Do I hear a motion to defer to the petitioner for Article 28?
Motion to defer to the petitioner.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So that is it for the warrant. So we're gonna look now at transfers. We have two transfers here. The first transfer, the assessor's office. The amount requested is coming from miscellaneous supplies, which has a present balance of $120. The amount requested is the $120. That's going to pay for it's going to update reval account to pay for envelopes for reval mailing.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, and the next transfer is from Town Hall, Building Maintenance. The amount, it's coming from the Building Maintenance account, which has a balance of $4,067.01. The amount requested is $2,000 to go to the equipment rental line. Reason is increased costs and need to replenish meter and mailing machine.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's four articles that we need to look at, when we meet before town meeting. Okay? 13, 14, 15, and 23. Okay? We have two sets of minutes here. Sharon has emailed them to us and provided them, March 15th, 2023, March 22nd, 2023. Does anyone have any questions about, or concerns about the minutes? All right, hearing none, they're accepted as read.
Madam Chair,
Oh, we didn't vote on capital yet, did we? All right, I'm sorry. Okay,
you didn't.
we did not, okay.
By approving Article 4.
Yeah, we did. Okay, so we did. What did you show me that?
I don't know if you want to take a separate vote.
We don't need a separate vote, do we?
We didn't separately vote on
We usually do? Okay, so to read off the amounts and everything?
Just here, just the total and the funding.
Okay, so, we have a, town manager recommendation for the, fiscal 2024 capital improvement plan budget. Town manager recommendation, $3,053,000, and $650. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Recommend this, right?
For motion to recommend.
Motion to recommend?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. Any questions? Yes, no? Mr. Kesnos, could you, is it possible you could email the town audit to us to look at?
I believe that's.
Oh, he did.
It's
Oh,
already
he
mailed.
did, that's the one
He
that's
did.
on there? Okay. Okay, good. All right, do we okay, so we're gonna meet in a week, too. We're meeting, yes,
Do the minutes
Yes, we did, yep. We're meeting in a week in a joint meeting at the presentation room at the high school, and we're meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. Okay? Is there any information you can provide to us beforehand? Will you be able to send any potential debt schedules out to us ahead of time?
So I can send out some debt schedules.
Yep.
Please keep in mind that those are not cast in concrete. I mean,
Correct.
rates are changing daily. It takes a snapshot in time.
Okay,
And I think part of the discussion that hopefully we'll have on the 12th is going to identify some areas that may not have been addressed in the cost estimate of 78 million, and it may result in a higher number.
okay. My only other question is there, I don't recall which line in the interest paid was for the high school debt. I mean, I know the debt amount, but do you remember which, maybe you can just email that to me too, if you can't tell me
So
tonight.
I'll be able to identify that.
Okay.
If you turn to 710,
Yep. Mine is all out of whack here, I moved them around. I shouldn't have. Maybe I didn't. Okay. Interest.
second line down, high school debt, 1,190,000.
So that's the debt. Is there a separate line under the interest?
And let me look, I think I have a debt schedule, and I don't. Yes, I do. For '24, it is 47,600.
That's for
Top
that.
line.
Okay, thank you.
47,600.
Yep, that's a high school interest.
And that's the last year,
Last
fiscal
year.
'24, so that's, okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any other questions? Do I hear a
Motion to
motion?
adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is adjourned.